Hello, students. My name's Rob Playfair. I work at the ELC, and today I'm going to be talking to you guys about the assessment for the 20-week pre-sessional course. Firstly, I just want to say I hope you guys are all well and safe. This is a new experience for the ELC, and I'm sure it's a new experience for you as well. So I'm going to try to be as clear as I possibly can today. But if you have any questions, you can email me. Then my email address is there. You can also ask your teachers for any further information. I hope this is clear. I'm going to go through each slide. We're going to start with the outline of this talk. So firstly, I'm going to give you guys an overview of the 20-week assessments, which assess the 4 skills. So that's reading, writing, listening, and speaking. Then I'm going to give you some details about each assessment. And then we'll talk about the consequences of the 20-week assessments. So that means what your scores mean, what happens when you get your scores. Section 4, I'll be talking about the information about when you get your results. And finally, in section 5, I'm going to give you some information about the assessment policy at the ELC. So let's begin. Okay, so this is the overview of the 20-week assessments. And as you can see, we've got the 4 skills that are assessed: reading, writing, speaking, and listening. So for the reading and writing, we actually assess them together. So for that, you need to write 2 essays, which we call reading to write, using ideas from academic sources like journal articles and newspaper reports. Essay 1, the final submission, will be in week 5, and Essay 2, the final submission, will be in week 9. For speaking, you can see there are 2 different kinds of tasks. Firstly is a mini presentation, which you will deliver in week 5. And secondly, there's a discussion with an examiner. And you'll do this twice, once in week 5 and once in week 10. And finally, we have a listening test, which involves listening to an academic lecture. And this will happen twice, once in week 7 and once in week 9. You can see in the yellow box at the bottom, I think my video might be covering that a little bit. Apologies for that, but it says you need to pass, which means 50% or above, in each of the 4 skills. So that's reading, writing, speaking, and listening, in order to progress onto the next stage of the course. Okay, so you cannot pass the writing but fail the reading, then you will not be able to progress. You have to pass the reading, the writing, the speaking, and the listening. Okay? If you want a bit more information about each of these tasks with the deadlines and the dates and all of that information, there's a document called Task Information Sheets, which you can find on Teams. Okay, let's move on to the next slide. So this is the reading to write assessment. So like I said, for each essay, you're going to read 3 source texts. So these are academic texts like journals, news articles. And the idea is that you're going to use information from these source texts to write your essay. This is a very academic style task. For each essay, you're going to submit a draft, and then your tutor will give you some feedback and some ideas to improve, and then you'll submit your final essay. Okay, and you can see the dates over here. We haven't got the exact dates down for this, but the draft submission will be in week 3, and then the final submission will be week 5, and then for essay 2, we've got week 7 and week 9 for the draft and final submission. So you can see your first task is going to be the draft submission in week 3. We'll send you the question for this draft submission 24 hours before the deadline. Okay, and all of this will be through Turnitin. Let's move on. Okay, I'm just going to minimize my face here again so we can see this slide fully. So this is what we call the marking criteria. And as I said, for this reading to write assessment, you're going to be assessed on both your writing and your reading skills. Okay, so for the writing, we'll be looking at the task achievement, coherence and cohesion, style and lexis, and grammar. Okay, these 4 different criteria make up your writing grade. Okay. Also, when we're marking your essay, we will also be looking at your reading, and we call this the source comprehension. So we're going to be looking at your essay and trying to see whether when you use information from the source text that you use them accurately. Okay, let's move on. I'll bring myself back here. So let's move on to speaking. So speaking has 2 types of tasks. Firstly, the mini presentation, which is in week 5. So this is going to be on a topic related to your subject or your field, something you want to study or something you're interested in, related to your master's or your PhD programs that you're planning to start in September. So the idea is that you record a presentation, so video record a presentation, and you will submit it via Turnitin. Your tutors will read that and give you a mark based on that. The other task for the speaking is a discussion. Okay, this is a video discussion you'll have with an examiner, and it's a little bit like the IELTS task 3. Some of you guys might be familiar with. So in this task, you'll be given a question, and then you will talk about it a little bit with the examiner. Okay, what the examiner will be looking for is not only how you express yourself, but also how you interact with the examiner, asking them questions, listening to their ideas, responding to their ideas with your own ideas. So it's not just about you talking, but it's also about how you interact with the examiner. Because these will be happening in a video discussion, both of them will be recorded. Okay. Let's move on. The marking criteria. So these are the things. I'll just close my video so you can see these in more detail. These are the 5 areas that we look at to mark your speaking. So we've got task achievement, delivery, fluency, pronunciation, and grammar and vocabulary. Okay, and you can see some explanations there about each of those different criteria. Okay. So the last assessment is the listening assessment. This is a video call with the examiner as well. And on that video call, the examiner will play you a short recording. It's about 3 minutes long. You'll listen to that recording, and the first time you'll just listen to it and have to say what the main idea is. And for the second time that you listen to it, the examiner will give you a question. Okay, now the question will be something like, what are the advantages and disadvantages? Or what are the problems and solutions? Okay, and the task is to listen to the recording and take notes about all of the answers to that question. And then you'll have 2 minutes to tell the examiner what those points are. Okay, you're going to have a practice of this in week 5, just to get familiar with the format and how it works. And then you'll have the first test in week 7, and then the second test in week 9. Okay. And again, just like the discussion test, these will be recorded. Okay. So this is very simple. The marking criteria for this task is very, very simple. What we judge a pass on is how many points that you get from related to the question that you can mention. Okay, so you need to list the correct number of points to pass. Okay, and we'll give you more information of that. And in week 5, you'll be able to practice and get a feel for what that feels like. Okay, let's move on. So I'll just close my video again so you can see this slide fully. So now I'm just going to talk about the consequences of the 20-week assessments. So by consequences, I mean what happens, what decisions do we have to make at the end of the course about what happens to you. Okay, so there's 2 real consequences. You can see we've got passing the 20-week course or failing the 20-week course. Okay, so if you pass, which means 50% or more in each of the 4 skills, okay, so that's reading, writing, listening, and speaking, that means that you've passed the 20-week course and you can move on to the 10-week course. Okay, failing the 20-week course, that means that you fail 1 or more of the 4 skills. Okay, and that means less than 50% overall for each of the skills: reading, writing, listening, and speaking. Okay, now the consequence of that is that you will not be able to progress onto the 10-week course. Okay, your results will be reviewed by the ELC exam board. Okay, and you can find more information about this in our code of practice, the ELC code of practice for assessment. Okay, but at this point, you don't need to be worrying about that. You really need to be focusing on passing the 20-week course. Okay. All right, let me bring my video back. All right, so it's very quick one here about the dates when you receive your results and reports. You'll get these reports in week 10, and if you do not pass, if you fail the course, you'll meet with the coordinator in week 10 as well. So that's when all of the decisions get made, will be in week 10. Okay. All right, so let's move on to the last section now, is this ELC assessment policy. So I'll just go through a few of these things. Now, these are a little bit complicated, so there's a bit more text on here, and what I'll do, I'll read through the text and I'll just explain anything in a little bit more detail. Okay, so this is called the ELC assessment policy, Fit to Sit. This means if you attend an exam or submit an assessed piece of work on the required day, you're declaring that you are fit to be assessed. Okay, and if there's any issue which you think might affect your performance in these, you have to let us know as soon as possible and always before the exam or the assessment deadline. Okay, has to be before. Really important. I'll just minimize my video so you can see this next slide. So this is about absence. So if you become ill during an exam, this is a little bit different and could be considered extenuating circumstances. Okay. So this means that if you can't attend an examination or submit your coursework by the deadline, you have to tell Emma, who's the course coordinator, or Rachel Peacock, who's the course director, as soon as possible and always before the exam deadline. Okay, you have to submit evidence of this. So this could be a medical note from the doctor. If it's not possible to get a medical note from a doctor, because I know a lot of people are not allowed to leave the house at the moment in some countries, you may be able to self-certify sickness, but you have to get in touch with Emma and Rachel in order to do that. And again, you have to do that as soon as possible and always before the examination. Okay. There's a form that you can complete called the Extenuating Circumstances form, which is available on Teams. Okay, let's move on. This is some examples of extenuating circumstances and some examples of things that are not extenuating circumstances. So firstly, you can see if you're ill, if you'd suffered a bereavement, so if somebody close to you has died, if there's somebody close to you has a serious illness, and also unforeseeable and unpreventable events. And at the moment, with the coronavirus situation, I think there are that would come under this unforeseeable and unpreventable events. The next section just talks about examples of things that are not extenuating circumstances. So these will not be approved. Okay. So for example, if you misread the instructions, okay, if you don't read the task information sheet correctly, if you decide to go on holiday or go to a wedding, if you attend an exam like the IELTS, if you don't plan or if you don't manage your time well, or something that you could have been expected or could have anticipated, something like a sporting event or work commitments or other commitments that you could have planned for. Okay. Okay, that's it. I'll just bring my video back to say goodbye. So that's it. You can see my email address there. I hope you found this useful, and if you do have any questions, please let me know. There's a quiz that should be available next to this somewhere on Teams. So make sure you complete the quiz, and if you do have any questions, please share them. Thanks very much. Goodbye.